There we go. Okay. Okay. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Stephanie Isham. I am one of the reference and instruction librarians. We are recording the workshop, just to let everyone know you're on camera. This is the American Psychological Association Citation Style Workshop. This is part of our citation series. For each major semester, fall and spring, we offer these workshops. Next month is Chicago Style for any history or humanities students. The first week in November will be University of Chicago author date. The 10th will be the note bibliography style. We also have current themed workshops for the semester. Next week at this time, my colleague Mohammed will be doing, and he's in here, he's manning the helm, will be doing a evaluating sources workshop. There are also graduate workshops every Saturday, once a month, and 2 Saturdays from now, we will do RefWorks. If there are any undergraduate students and would be interested in how to manage your citations and save them and work with them, you might be interested in RefWorks as well. So I'm doing this on Teams, and I am doing this in a classroom. So if you have questions, like my classroom people have questions, please speak up. My colleague Mohammed will be monitoring the chat so that if you have any questions, speak up, and he'll be able to direct me to those. Also in the chat is a copy of this PowerPoint and a PDF file of the APA style from APA, which just gives you 2 or 3 brief references and how to go about the format for them as well. So are we all set? Just checking in with my audience. Okay, all ready? Okay. Okay. So APA style. The APA Psychological Association style is the most commonly used for manuscripts in the social sciences. I've seen this used in health information management, also in nursing, as well as sociology and psychology. The APA website, the American Psychological Association website, also offers particular web sources on the web. So that is your URL right there. We are doing the 7th edition. That's what the cover is. We have multiple copies of the APA publication manual that you can use in the library or you can check out. APA regulates your document format and your style. This is, do I include an abstract, page numbers, what's my font, different things like that. And then it does in-text citations, which is how you cite the source in your text and how you introduce the source in your text, as well as end-of-text citations. This is your reference list. Usually when people are concerned with citing in APA, it's these end-of-text citations they're mainly concerned with. So we're going to cover all of those. But before I begin, because this is for you'll be mainly using this in your classes, I always suggest to follow your instructor's guidelines. They're the ones grading the paper. Sometimes they want you to use specific guidelines, so look in your syllabus, look at your paper instructions, and see what they recommend. But if they say use APA, this is what you're going to do. Let's start with the document format. APA now has two different, for a student paper and for a professional paper. That is for if you are submitting an article for publication, or you're submitting a proposal for a book, or different things like that. But I am making the assumption that we are all students and we're doing student papers, so we're going to focus on the student papers. Your general guidelines: standardized size paper, 1-inch margins on all sides, use a readable typeface. It used to be specifically Times New Roman, but it doesn't have to be. It just needs to be readable with a 10 to 12 font size. Double space all text all the way through the document. 1 space after the punctuation between sentences. If you're old like me, you're used to punctuation, 2 spaces. Nope, it's punctuation, 1 space. You number pages beginning with the Arabic numeral 1, and you go on. So it's 1, 2, 3. But what you do is your cover page is page 1, your abstract is page 2, and then your first page is page 3. Here is the format visually for the title page. So you have your title centered in the upper half. There's your page number. So I'm used to having a clear page. No, they want it numbered. Your name, academic department, course instructor, date, and are also down here, and they're centered. So your text. This is where you start your introduction, your thesis, things like that. Number the first text page is 3. Like I said, title is 1, abstract 2, first page is 3. Center and bold the full title of the paper at the top of the page. That's your first page. Center, type the text double spaced with all the sections following each other without a break. So you'll type, finish your paragraph in one section, hit return, start again. Or when you are typing your paragraphs, let the word processing processor do the breaks for you. You identify the sources you use in the paper, either with narrative citations or parenthetical in-text citations. You format tables and figures, and there are sections in APA which will give you the guidelines for that, as well as different headings and things like that. Okay, so this is the reference page. Center the title references. At the top of the page, you bold it. You didn't have to do that. Now in the 7th, you have to. Your entries are alphabetical by the author's last name. And you can see that here. Now these two are, notice the American Association of University Professors here. There's no last name, so you just do, when you have an organization, you do the first word of the organization in alphabetical order. You double space your reference entries, just like you do the rest of the text. And then you flush left the first line of the entry and indent subsequent lines. This is also known as a hanging indent. And you'll do that here. And there are different ways with word processing software that will allow you to do that. Okay, now let's talk in-text citations for APA. Okay, I just want to check. Are we good with questions? Okay. Yes?
I have a question. What if you have some references that are multiple references, they're by the same author? How would you organize those in your references list?
You'll go by author and then its publication date.
Okay, thank you.
And the APA handbook will go into greater detail with that. Like, and what if they have the same date? And, you know, what if you don't have a title, author? Then you go by title and you include the author. But if you are citing, it would be your publication date.
And in the same year, you can write down session 1, session 2, or
yeah. So what you can do is you can put in you can indicate it as 2001A, 2001B. And then after that point, you'd go by title of the source. And then that way they know, okay, it's this first source or this second source. To do it. Okay. In text, thank you very much, everyone. And we're good online with the chat?
Yes.
Great. Okay. In text citations. So what's an in-text citation? It helps readers locate the cited source in the reference sections of the paper. So you put a citation in your text of where you did a quote, where you paraphrased, so that your reader can go to the reference list and find the source. There have been times where, oh, I didn't know that. Let me see the source as a reader. And as a writer, if there's any ideas that are not your own, you need to cite them. Otherwise, they'll think it's your own idea, and if it's not, you could get in trouble. So a parenthetical citation includes both the author's last name and year of publication, separated by a comma, which is different from MLA. We have, if anyone else has been in the MLAs, we have a comma and we have a P if we come up in this later. And that's at the end of the sentence before the period. Before the period marks that, in this case, this Atkins belongs to this sentence. It doesn't belong to the next sentence. So research suggests that Purdue OWL is a good resource for students. Then I'm not mentioning Atkins, but I am giving the source where I got that information. And you're going to see a lot of Purdue OWL. They've been very helpful. If you do not know about Purdue OWL, they can be a very great source for me for teaching and for you for learning to cite different things. The handout is from the APA, but I also got it through Purdue OWL. The narrative citation includes the author's name in the sentence with the year of publication following the author's last name. Coming from Chicago, I was used to introducing the author in the text. In this case, Atkins suggests, or such and such says, or da-da-da remarked, or came up with a great idea. So I had to introduce them first, and then I could just go by Atkins or different things. So in APA, you'll do the name and then the date in parentheses. So Atkins 2008. And like the audience member mentioned, what if you have different years, the same year? It would be 2008 little a or B. And this allows me to go, oh, Atkins did? Flip back to the references list, look for Atkins 2018, and there's my source. And depending on, this could be, okay, I want to use this information, or sometimes it's, really? I've never heard that. Who said that? And I want to go follow up the work. But that's how you do it. So you have just the year and different things there. So narration is in your narrating. You are narrating. As an author, you're acting as the narrator in your paper. Yes?
Is a narrative citation the same thing as paraphrasing? I only ask this because in the papers that I've written in APA, which have been very many, it was always referred to as paraphrasing rather than narrative.
Okay. Well, this narrative, the narrative citation is the Atkins 2018. Paraphrasing is for me is a different concept. So this could also be paraphrasing. Yeah. You see how they're doing paraphrasing, but they're mentioning the author in the narrative. So the narrative citation means mentioning the author and providing a citation in your text. So you could do that and paraphrase. And because it's a period, and if you're paraphrasing in one sentence, then it connects, and it's the only citation, and you mention the author and you have those parentheses, then the reader will be aware that you have paraphrased. Good question.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes, ma'am.
Good, okay. All right. We're doing good? Okay, thank you. Okay. If the source you're citing includes page numbers, add that information to your citation. And I'm going to go through this slide and I'm going to stop because sometimes I get this question with students, and when I taught, I got it with my students, and I think, and it's a good question, so I want to address it. If you're doing your parenthetical citation, you just add your page number. Page number follows year of publication with the lowercase p and the period before the p. So Atkins, 2018, page 12. For a narrative, the page number comes at the end of the sentence, lowercase p, period, page number. So I would suggest using page numbers if you're directly quoting from a particular page, or you're pulling an idea from a particular page, versus what the overall work says. And I don't think, let's see, I'm holding in my hands for your imagination, I'm holding a book, and it says The Presidential Difference, Leadership Style from FDR to George W. Bush. And this author uses a set criteria to evaluate leadership styles for presidents. So if I want to mention the criteria that's all through the book, then I could cite the whole book because it's consistently through it. It's what makes this book, one of the things that makes this book special is that he applies these criteria to all of these presidents. Now, if I want to mention something in a particular president in this book, for example, Greenstein refers to Bill Clinton as undisciplined, then I am going to quote that page. And I am going to put undisciplined in quotation marks. So if you have, now think about it if you're a researcher. Then if there's no page, then you can understand that it's the whole text. If you are and if you have a particular page, then you as the researcher know to go to page 173 and see where Bill Clinton is referred to as undisciplined. So if you are talking about the whole work, the thesis, something that's applied all the way, an over summary, you don't need to use a page number. If you're quoting directly from the text or paraphrasing a particular part of the text, then you need to do that page. So, and then you'll notice here, if you're just using the parenthetical citation, you just add the P and it's at the end of the sentence. For narrative citation, you have to identify, you have to include the year with Atkins at the beginning at a different place, and then put the page at the end. So it's a little more, most of the time you can just add the comma, P, period, and the page number. But in this case, you do it two different places.
Because you stated the author name first.
You state the author name first, and when you state the author name, you have to put that year of publication.
Yes.
So you would do that. I'm trying to think of some other ways where what you may be able to do is if you are using one particular source. So I'm using Greenstein. Again, I don't know if it shows up with my face on the camera or not. And I am, thank you. And I am quoting multiple pages in the same paragraph. If I mention it in the text once, and I can show that we're all in the same spot, You should just be able to do the page numbers in your individual sentences. So like my whole thesis is, this is a book review. And I mention it, and I introduce the book, and then I would think, and then my audience knows in my narrative that we're still talking about this book, and I haven't introduced any other sources yet, then I believe you could put just your pages. But it depends how you write it. Very good leading question. Thank you. Quoting and paraphrasing. Okay. When quoting, introduce the quotation with a signal phrase. This is, your signal phrase is, I'm going to talk about a quote here. When paraphrasing, use the same citing guide as quoting. Your citation guidelines are the same, but if you are quoting, you need to introduce it. That distinguishes between a quotation and a paraphrasing. So here's the parenthetical citation, author, date, at the end of the quotation or paraphrase. Just like the parenthetical style. So as scientific knowledge advances, that's your introduction. Whenever you do a quote, you need to introduce it. That's universal along, even block quotes you need to introduce. Then there's Hong, then there's my citation at the end. In the narrative, include the author's last name in the signal phrase with the page number at the end of the quote. So, and then those dates, stated that, blah, 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 and then the page number. So this sets up the source, puts me in mind of who's saying this and giving it credit, and then there is the page number. So okay, Hong, quote, that's where I can find. Okay. Okay. Everyone okay here?
Yes.
Great questions. Thank you very much. Now we're dealing with the end of text citations. This is the reference list. This is what we're all working at 1:30 in the morning. Not like I know anything about that, but there we go. Okay. Basic steps to selecting the correct citation for formatting. I teach this in Chicago. I teach this in APA. Muhammad teaches MLA. And it's the basic procedure for whatever. First is identify the source. What is it? Is it a book? Is it a journal article? Is it an online book? Is it an online journal article? Is it a report? Is it a video? Those are cited differently. So you have to know what type of source. Then you go to your handout, or you go to your citation book and find the appropriate citation, or you go to Purdue OWL. And what they're going to do is they're going to give you an outline, like your handout does, author, da, 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 and they're going to give you an outline for it. So you're going to mirror that sample outline entry, replacing the information with your source's information. So it says author, last name, comma, first two initials. You're going to go to your source and find the author's last name, type it in, just like it says how to type it in. Make sure your entries are alphabetized and include hanging indents. So when you look at that list, before you say finished, double check that it is alphabetized. Your individual entry, make sure that it has hanging indents. And off you go to the races. This is the basic skeletal structure of a reference. Author, publication date in parentheses, the title, and the source. There'll be different things added for different sources, but they're all going to follow this basic format. And sometimes as you are looking around and as you are exposed to different formats, this will help you distinguish whether it's an APA source or another different type of source. And one of the things I look for APA is the publication date after the author in the quotation marks. Because if I remember from MLA, it's at the end, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. And then Chicago has it up there, but I don't think it's in parentheses, but don't push me on that. So that allows you to be aware that this is APA. And if you come across a unfamiliar type of source, it helps you wing it. Or to see other sources. You may come across, if you're doing advanced research, a source cited in APA, but it is not in a language you can understand. You can still pick out the title. You can still know if it's a journal because you understand the basic format. So your author, who's responsible? Who wrote it? If it's an organization, are they taking credit for it? Who takes credit for it? Sometimes, a committee does work and it's all through the committee. Sometimes organizations will have websites and the organization, all the members of the organization can't go, but they hire someone to write the website and they take responsibility for it and assume authority. So who wrote it? Your publication date. When was this work published? The particular one you're holding in your hot little hand. Because sometimes electronic dates are different than we know for sure. Sometimes it's a different edition, but the one you're holding in your hot little hand or is facing on your screen, that's the publication date. Yes?
Something that I've come across sometimes, especially when I'm looking at electronic resources, is sometimes there's not always a publication date listed.
Okay.
What would you do in the event that happens?
Not ND. Parentheses, N period, D period, no date.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And then the title. What's the work called? Title of the book. Title of the article. Title of the website or web page. You may have a website, but a particular web page, as you'll see. Then the source. Where can I get this work? Is it in a larger magazine? Is it part of a larger website? Is it in a book? Is it the book itself? So keep that in mind, and then any space between those sections, period. Author, period. Date, period. Title, period. Source, period. And you do periods except for the very end. Okay. The APA publication manual on page 248 has great section on if I'm missing information. So be sure to check that out. Usually you move on, but you may have to enter no date, ND, or things like that. Sometimes it's just, I know Muhammad teaches move on, but they may have different rules. So that may be one of the ones you want to bookmark. I have a few things automatically bookmarked in my copy of the APA manual. And this could be a good one to bookmark, so you can go right to it and get it done. Okay. Now I'm going to go through the rules for each of those sections. The author, the publication date, the title, and the source. And these are just the top ones. The guide is going to have a lot more. So I'm just giving you the basics. And then the guide will help you. Purdue Owl may help you as well. They go into pretty good detail. Author's author's names. Last name first. Your first initials. So Smith, comma, then the first initial and the middle initial. And if you don't have a middle initial, you don't worry about it. Use a comma to separate an author's initials from other authors' names. So Smith, J period, Q period, comma, two punctuations right there. And then ampersand for the last one, and you're still in the same order. Some of them will have last name first and then first and last name. One thing nice about APA, it's all that same way. Author's last name, comma, initial period, comma, and off you go, ampersand instead of and. Yes?
What happens if you have multiple authors with the same last name? How would you handle that?
It would be your initials.
Okay.
And you put them in the order that they're listed on the page.
Okay.
So you may have Ishams, but they could be in different places. For example, if you're going to go by my surname.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's how you would handle that. And you pull the names. You don't change the order of the names. Where they're written, as they're written in the article, that's that order, that's how you'll put it. So that will cover it. And sometimes the authors will, if they have the same, will have different first and middle initials. Or one will put a first and middle initial, or one will just do the first. And it also could be the order. Add that. So before this change, if you had 6 or more authors, then you could use the ellipsis. Now it's up to 20. If there are more than 21, include 19, use an ellipsis, 3 dots, ... Then the final author's name. And I know it sounds amazing, but sometimes a lot of the the hard sciences will have up to 20 authors or more. And sometimes you're just editing and you're fact checking and then you're given credit. So hopefully you won't run across this problem very much. But you do enter everyone until you get to more than 21, 19, ... just the 3 dots and the author's name. And there'll be your APA manual will give you more circumstances with that. But usually the order of it will help you. And in journals and different things, they're not going to put it in alphabetical order, not because it's by who contributed the most and who did the most work, or they think more who did the most work. Now we're on to publication. Date of publication is in parentheses with a period. So there's a year period, and then your date, and then for the second one, if you have a month, comma, the month and the day, and then period. But if you're using ellipsis and writing, it's inside. So, period. Okay. And you'll use this format with newspaper articles or magazines that come out weekly or daily. But there's your general year. Okay. Capitalization. This is a unique rule that I don't know of any other citation format using, at least from the bigs. And it's also one of the quickest ways I can tell if it's APA or if it's cited correctly in APA. So you capitalize the first letter of the first word of a title, the first word after a colon or a dash in the title, that could be your subtitle, and proper nouns. And then I thought this was interesting. Do not capitalize the first letter of the second word in a hyphenated compound word. So if you have Native American, if it's hyphenated, then native is, but the hyphenation is not. The word after the hyphen. So here's my example. This is a fictitious title that I've created. Knitting as a lens to understand the human condition. The works of Stephanie Pearl McPhee. Knitting is capitalized because that's the first word. The is capitalized because it's after the colon. And Stephanie Pearl McPhee is a proper noun. This is a person. You capitalize all major words and journal titles. So Journal of Education Psychology. And capitalization also helps you tell what is a book title and what is the journal title. Your larger works, the larger work is italicized, and this is the same way as in MLA. So this is a book at Knits In, Meditations for Women Who Knit Too Much. So there's your capital, there's your that. This is reactive and functional perimeters. Then and that's a journal title. So you italicize them. This is a journal title, that's why it's all capitalized. And that also gives you, as you are reading, a clue that this citation is of a journal or an essay in a larger book. Okay. Do not italicize, underline, or put quotes around the titles of shorter works, such as journal articles or essays in edited collections. So you can see it here. There's my journal, but the shorter title does not have anything else. And I swear the spacing is okay on that, I checked. It's supposed to be one space. Okay. That is also a clue. What's italicized, what's not. You're not going to see a lot of quotation marks in APA.
Yeah.
Okay. So we talk about the source. And this is the source section. And what is it a greater whole of? So the sources for a work that is part of a greater whole is that greater whole. And any applicable DOI or RUL. So you have the journal title, your journal title not, and then that greater whole, that source at the end is the journal, Science Advances. For a book chapter, the greater whole is the book title. So warped knitted fabric construction is the source at the end. Double needle bar structures, fundamental and double face structures is your first part of your source. They kind of go from the little bit to the big bit. And then, of course, for your book, for my presidential difference, the sources of a work that stands alone is the publisher of the work and any applicable DOI and URL. So the publisher here is, because this is a standalone work, will be the source, the publisher, because that's where you go get it. You could also, I see in a way, quoting a journal itself, then the publisher would be for that. Like if you just wanted to, you're mentioning the whole journal in a paper, or you're analyzing the whole journal, then your publisher. The publisher is responsible for it. And you would use that as your source. Include the DOI for all works that have a DOI, regardless of the version you used. So yes.
For those who are unfamiliar with the term, what is a DOI?
It's a digital object identifier. These are for online born or versions of items. And that is supposed to be a permanent link. You type in the DOI in Google and you search it up and it'll pull up the page for the article or the page for the book. And that helps you with citing and deals with semi-permanent links, different things like that. So I can look at that DOI and go right to at least the information of that book, yeah, or the information of the article, depending on its rights, whether I would get full text or not. So, but it is like, I almost think of it like physical books, sometimes even though electronic books will have international standard book numbers. Or we'll have international standard serial numbers. So I almost think of a DOI as something similar to that for the native born.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. So Now I'm going to talk about the second one here. What if I'm using a paper version of it? You know, like I have an example of it without the DOI. It could be that the book wasn't published when there was an electronic version or the article. Or it could be that I'm looking at it. So include the DOI. My advice is, and my suggestion is, don't hunt too hard.
Yeah, if you don't get it.
Yeah,
just-
if you're using it in paper and it's not in your online record, or it's not in the book, you know, it's not in the book, you know, publication information, don't worry about it. If you see it, great. And catalog records will have it. Database records will have it. And if you go to an ebook, it'll be right there for you, as we'll see shortly. So don't worry too much about this. Due diligence, but don't hunt it down. Okay. Present the DOI or URL as a hyperlink, so they can go right to it if you're looking at an online document. URL should link directly to the cited work. This can be tricky when you're in databases. This can be tricky in catalogs because it may be a temporary URL. Databases have what they call permalinks, and so do library catalogs. Falcon Finder has a permalink. So look at that record, find your permalink, and use the permalink. Otherwise, they may be going to a dead link, and that could be a problem because they can't check it. If I can't verify it, does it exist? So do not add a period after the DOI and URL. We're so used to entering periods, date period, that. We don't do it here for ease of searching because it's hyperlinked, remember? The period would throw off the hyperlink. So it's the one place you don't have to use a period. So we have that basic structure. You have basic rules for the different parts. Let's look at the book reference. So that's the author name or the institution or the editor. Sometimes there are books that are based on themes and or topics, and there are multiple chapters in there written by different people. But the editor gets the credit for the main part of the book because they're the ones who are spearheading this. They're finding it. They're working with the authors. They're doing things. They are selecting materials very carefully. So you may have an author as an editor as in your author field, and then you would do ED or EDS after the name. And that lets your reader know, this is the editor of the book. Your date of publication, parentheses, period, your title, including subtitle. You only have to do an addition if it's not the first. And sometimes you may need to do a volume if it's a work in multiple volumes, or the editor or translator. That distinguishes the translator particularly, distinguishes that version of the books from other versions. To go to that exact one, you may need to know the translator. And translators do important work. And it's almost an art as well. So you put that in, and you put that in parentheses, just like I showed here. And then sometimes you'll have more popular books or out of public domain books, but the editor is a famous one. I'm always thinking of maybe your Sherlock Holmes, or I think for Jane Austen. And sometimes editors don't just look through the text and make sure the grammar is okay. The editor will go to drafts, printings, if they exist, and then try to figure out what word this is, or is this used correctly? Was this a grammar mistake that was put in the book? Or as an editor, or do I need to update the language? Beowulf, a lot of the Victoria, different things. And so that work needs to be acknowledged. Publisher. This is Random House, Elsevier. And I usually get that right from the cover page, or you can get that in the back with the copyright information. And then if you have it, the electronic retrieval information. So here's an example of one that's electronic. There's my authors, the ampersand, they're editors.
Yes.
So period, my year, literature is the first one, English Revolution is a specific proper noun. And then Ashgate's the publisher, no place of publication anymore. And then your DOI. Now this one here, I don't have a DOI. It wasn't in the record. It's a physical book. I'm pulling it off the shelf. So I end at Yale University Press. Author, date, title, very clean and simple. Journal. Okay. Author, same. Date, same. Title of the article. Remember, no italics, no quotation marks, just type it in normal. Your title of your periodical, comma. And then your volume has to be italicized. Title of periodical, comma, all italicized, volume, and then it's right next to the issue. You almost want to put a space in there, but you can't. Then the pages, period.
I've noticed this sometimes when I've been coming across periodical information. Depending on the periodical, sometimes they don't have a volume number. Sometimes they only have a month. What would we do?
You'd put the month there.
The month.
Yeah.
Okay.
And some of them don't have months. Some of them have each issue is its own volume. They don't have issues. Periodicals can be very tricky how they do that. So you just put your whatever your item is there, or you don't leave it blank and you put your month in there with your date of publication.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. So there's my two authors, there's my date. My capitalization is good. There's my journal.
The bigger.
With all the capital and it's italicized. There's my volume account, and then the pages. And the pages you don't have to do P.
Yeah, it's different from
Yeah, it's just the numbers. And then my DOI. I usually do DOI if I have it. And then I use the URL as a backup. Because the DOI is supposed to be more stable. I'm concluding with the web page or website, because this can be tricky. And a lot of us cite them. So your author, your date, your title of work, and then your URL. Don't have to do the publisher or anything. So I have, and then this is my date for it. 2020, October 27th. And that for your date of publication could also be like your date of update. The date I got for this was my last updated. Boom. So when it goes out there, it's updated, it's published. And then sometimes if I don't have that, I use the copyright. But I like it when they say they're updated or posted. And some of them do that. Then there's my title. And this is the title like of the this is a table in a report that's been put online that used to be in flyers and paper. So that's the title of this particular work. It's not part of like the US Census website. We're talking about this particular, I'm citing the marriage and divorce rates by state. And then the URL. So do you have to include, no, whatever the title of the work you're looking at. It could be an entry on this from an online encyclopedia. Because otherwise, it used to be you'd get real tricky. United States Department of Commerce, comma. United States Central Census Bureau, comma. Very clean. Okay. So we're going to do a little practice. So you see this live, and then we're going to do a little advice. Okay. The best and most accurate citation team is your brain and the guide.
Have a APA citation guide in our library?
Yes. At the reference desk, I have one in my office we can refer to. There's a copy in the stacks as well for it to check out. But that is the best way to do it. So get to know the basics and get to know the guide and how to use it. And if you do, you'll be able to cite almost anything quickly and accurately. You know the basic format for a journal, you can do it yourself. There's the article.
I have a question. For example, if I want to cite a YouTube, so, you know, because there is many rules, I can get everything from the APA style guide.
Yes. Yeah. And you may come, I know with my school, and there wasn't a lot of YouTubes, but I could cite a book or a journal article in Chicago or APA if you just randomly handed me one, because I had memorized the basic format and it was in my brain and I could just type it out or write it out. Yeah.
Speaking of, she was mentioning how to cite YouTube videos. The last time I looked in the guide, they do also give information on how to cite blog posts, tweets, TED Talks, Facebook posts, things of that nature that are newer.
Yes. They do that too. But I only had an hour. So
I know there is another good site,
Purdue Owl, I mentioned that, and they can give you other more examples. They pull the most popular and the most common. So you can always refer to Purdue Owl, and Purdue Owl will cite where they found it in the citation manual. So you can look at it and get more follow-up as well. Okay, so do we have a time for a little bit of practice, do you think? How's our crowd?
Yeah,
we can do it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just basic.
Just basic one. So here's all my stuff. No. There's my book.
Okay.
Here's the APA guide for a book. Let's see, is it going to give me? So there's the basic format. Title of the book. Okay. Here's my book. Nice PDF. Here's my document. Okay, so author.
Yes.
Anthony Goodman.
I think the last name, Goodman,
Okay.
goes first.
Okay.
And then probably comma.
Okay.
And then probably the first image here.
Okay.
Then full stop. Then we have to write down the publication as a parenthesis.
DC, okay.
So I'm not sure where it is.
Oh, there's the cover.
Okay.
There's some cover pages.
Okay.
There's the title page.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
And there we go here. So it was first published in 1992, but this one was published in 2013.
So latest.
So I do 2013.
Okay.
There we go. Period.
Then probably we have to write down the book's name. Yes.
There's our title, and you see where I get it. Okay.
And should we italicize the book name? Okay.
So I've got that. I got the first letter John,
Yeah.
and I'm doing Gaunt because that's a proper noun. He's named after the place of his birth, or he's known by that name, and he was in Ghent or Gaunt, depending.
After the semicolon, you have to write down the capitalization. Except Europe, because Europe is proper noun.
Period.
Full stop. You should
One
make,
space.
yeah.
Then there's my publisher, right?
Okay.
Is published next? Let's see.
Yeah, the public next, I think, the publisher name.
Okay.
Which
there
is
we
source.
go. Yeah. Publisher and then DOI. So you see how I'm going back and forth? So there's your publisher, Routledge. I would just do the big one. That's confusing too. Do you give Taylor and Francis? I don't.
Stop, and then you get any DOI number.
Okay, so I'm not seeing a DOI here.
So you don't have to worry.
But
yeah.
Or if I go to the library website, there she is. Now let's see if we have a DOI. We have a DOI. So there's one I can copy, or I can go into the full text online at the main page of the book. There it is. I can just copy it. Because this one I knew I got it online, because I have that nice pretty PDF. So let's go by there. Do I want to close all tabs? No. I want to close these tabs. And then I can put it right there.
Yes,
okay.
And don't forget,
I need to change.
Italics, and we probably have to do hanging indent.
So there's my italics. Okay.
And hanging
indent. Now you have a shortcut.
Control plus T.
There we go. Then I need to change my font to double. And then I have to make sure that my font is clear. So let's do a Calibri. That looks pretty good. And let's do a 12. And there we go. So date, author, correct. Title looks good. Publisher, plain, boom. Author, space. And you see how I pulled from that format and from my brain and pulled it from different sources? If you're doing electronic ones, and you can use the PDF, like the PDF of my book, showed me where it is. Because I can look at that cover page, I can look at things like that. Sometimes your citation in a catalog or a database will have that information as well, clearly labeled, which is nice. So thank you for practicing with me. And the more you do this, the easier it'll get. Unfortunately, maybe by the time you graduate. But that way you can just do it off the top of your head, and you're not going to the manual every time, only when you need it for particular circumstances. Okay? Any questions for anyone else? Everyone's been pretty good about mentioning things and stuff, and I will go back here. Okay. I wish I could minimize mine. Okay. And everyone can see me and do anything else. Okay. I have the transcript. I need the conversation. So are we good with everything. Okay, now remember at the top is the handout that I showed and demonstrated the copies of my slides for different things. And then Muhammad has also included a link to the survey. Please let us, it's in your conversation, your meeting chat, and let me know how I did and what I can do to improve or what I did fine. Thank you everyone for attending. There should be my contact information on the first slide. If you have any questions, you can email me and contact me directly. You can visit us at the reference desk here at the library, or contact us through Falcon Chat if you need more help with this. Keep in mind, remember, next week, Muhammad is doing website evaluation, and I'll be in the audience asking questions too. So you'll get to see the teaching dynamics very differently. And then I don't see anything else. Muhammad, can you check the chat for me one more time before I end this?
Yes, nothing. It's everything. Can you see the APA citation PowerPoint?
Okay. Can my group people, can anyone see everyone? It should be at the very top. Or you can, this recording will go on the library's YouTube channel. So if you just Google J. Conrad Dunagan Library YouTube, we'll probably have that up by the beginning of the day tomorrow.
Yeah.
Just to warn you, it is the transcript will not be edited, but it will be there. You can also see Muhammad's MLA, older editions of different things, and you can catch up with workshops as well. Since everything is quiet, and I'm a few minutes over my time, I'm going to end it. Thank you for attending, and I hope you at least learned something new.
Thank you.